the cameras flash, the crowd freezes, and just like that, Hollywood is completely obsessed with its favorite unproblematic nice guy.
Right.
But what if I told you that behind that ageless smile, there is a secret past? Like a history filled with loaded guns, courtroom sentences, and literal generational trauma.
It's wild to even think about.
Welcome to Star Scoop Report. Join Jordan and Jamie as they uncover Hollywood drama, music industry shakeups, and viral influencer scandals. From red carpet surprises to social media controversies, we dive deep into the stories behind the fame.
Because, when you think of Paul Rudd, it creates this massive cognitive dissonance.
Totally.
We're so conditioned to view him as the ultimate Hollywood everyman, right?
Yeah.
Like the safe, comfortable guy who loves a terrible dad joke just to make his kids, Jack and Darby, roll their eyes.
Which is exactly why we're pulling out the magnifying glass today. The mission of this deep dive, based on the stack of sources you, the listener, shared with us, is to totally deconstruct that pristine image.
Yeah, we have to look at the machinery behind it.
Exactly. We're looking at the incredibly complex and honestly sometimes dangerous machinery working behind that famous smile. Because when you actually look at the biographical landscape of his life, it is astonishingly chaotic.
It really is. The reality of how someone develops that unflappable, nice guy persona is rarely as simple as just being born with a sunny disposition.
Right.
It's usually forged in some very unpredictable fires.
So let's unpack this. Let's look at those fires, starting with, well, a neon plastic water gun. You picture a young Paul Rudd as this wholesome Midwestern kid, right?
Right, of course.
But according to the incident reports detailed in our sources, he had 2 distinct run-ins with the law that escalated way past your standard suburban rebellion.
Way past.
He's 16, riding shotgun while his friend Mike is driving, and they get into a water gun fight with another car full of their friends driving right next to them.
Which is, a completely standard, albeit foolish, teenage scenario.
Sure.
In their minds, they're just goofing off.
Right, but the other car speeds off, and a police cruiser pulls up behind Mike and Paul. They pull over, the police officer gets out, approaches the car, and draws a real weapon on these 2 teenagers. Yeah. The source text quotes the officer as saying, "All right, boy, slowly, real slowly, hand over that water gun, and you better pray it's a water gun."
Which, that completely shatters the illusion of suburban safety right there.
Absolutely.
And just to impartially look at the historical outcome documented in the materials, the teens complied. The officer secured the water toys, and citations were issued.
Yeah.
Mike received a ticket for reckless driving, and Rudd was actually cited as an accomplice to reckless driving, which meant a mandatory court appearance.
He had to stand in front of a judge for being the passenger in a water gun fight.
Right.
And it doesn't stop there. And by the way, that's not even the wildest part. Later in this deep dive, we'll talk about a shocking twist in a Kansas City boxing ring.
Oh, that story is incredible.
But first, a few years after the water gun thing, he's a freshman in college in Lawrence, Kansas. He's standing outside a local bar called The Bull. He's underage, holding a beer, and the police roll up.
Another highly common collegiate misstep,
But his reaction is pure slapstick comedy. He panics and just dumps the beer out right in front of the cops.
Just right on the ground.
Total failure of panic logic. Like a bad comedy routine. He dumps it, the cop asks if it's his beer, and Rudd says, "Yeah, but I wasn't drinking it."
It's a phenomenal example of a brain just completely short-circuiting under pressure.
Exactly. So he ends up back in the legal system. He gets sentenced to community service at a local Boys and Girls Club.
Right.
And this is where I need to ask you something, because this is the origin story of a Hollywood A-lister. How did he end up getting beat up by a kid over a dumped beer? Like, shouldn't he have had a triumphant Rocky moment?
Well, that would be the cinematic version, yes. But the reality is the exact opposite. While he was putting in his hours, the teenagers pressured the counselors, including Rudd, into participating in a boxing exercise. And during this harmless exercise, one of the kids legitimately fought him. In Rudd's own recounting of the story, the teenager absolutely kicked his ass. He took a real physical beating in that ring.
So no triumphant movie montage at all?
Not even close. But the crucial detail isn't the beating itself, right? It's his reaction to it.
Yeah.
Even at the time, while absorbing literal punches to the face, his immediate instinct was to find the entire situation incredibly funny.
Wow.
He laughed at the sheer absurdity of getting beaten up by a kid while doing community service for a dumped beer.
I want to look at that mechanism for a second, because his public persona is often described as like a perfectly polished marble statue, no cracks, no rough edges.
Okay.
But that's a terrible metaphor. He isn't a marble statue. He's a shock absorber.
Oh, that's a much more functional analogy.
Right. A shock absorber takes kinetic energy, whether it's the fear of a police gun, the humiliation of a terrible lie, or the physical pain of a teenager punching you, and it disperses it so the vehicle doesn't break. He absorbs the tension and disperses it into comedy. And hey, if you're loving these Hollywood twists and psychological deep dives, make sure you're subscribed. We've got even crazier stories ahead in this one.
Yeah, hit that subscribe button, because if we connect this to the bigger picture, that shock absorber didn't just install itself overnight in a Kansas boxing ring.
No.
It's a deeply ingrained generational feature.
Yeah.
To understand how that mechanism was built, we actually have to travel back across the Atlantic.
Yes, and this is where the cultural context of his life gets completely turned upside down. You look at him and think, baseball, hot dogs, American pie.
Right.
But
Yeah.
he actually had a deeply British upbringing. Both of his parents, Michael and Gloria, were from the UK, and actually they were second cousins.
Right, which prompted Red to joke, which explains why I have 6 nipples.
Yes. They relocated to the Kansas City area because his father took a job with TWA, the airline. But the home environment remained fiercely British.
Very much so.
Intensely British. Like, he insists on strictly hot PG tips tea with milk, none of the iced tea you usually find in the Midwest. He grew up eating Sunday roasts, Yorkshire pudding, and Cadbury fingers.
Yeah.
His idol was the British pop star Adam Ant. He even studied Jacobean drama at Oxford later on, which, if you don't know, is a genre of 17th century theater famous for extreme cynicism, dark themes, and intense violence.
Which is wildly ironic for a guy we associate with lighthearted comedy.
Totally.
The cultural collision here is immense.
Yeah.
You have a household steeped in British culture and simultaneously rooted in Jewish heritage, dropped directly into the middle of the American Bible Belt.
That is a recipe for feeling like an outsider.
And he absolutely did. During a podcast interview referenced in our sources, Rudd discussed the anti-Semitism he faced as a child. He was frequently called Jew boy by his peers at school.
Ugh, that's awful. So how does a kid survive that environment without becoming completely bitter?
Well, he relies on the shock absorber. He realized very early on that if he leaned into self-deprecating Jewish jokes, he could manipulate the tension.
Ah, I see.
If he made the other kids laugh, they'd accept him. He weaponized humor to defang the prejudice. He noted later in life that it was a pretty twisted dynamic to navigate as a child, but it served as his armor.
He made himself the punchline so he wouldn't be the target.
Exactly.
But this family history of navigating prejudice goes back way further than a playground in Missouri. The sources dive into his grandfather's story on finding your roots, and it is incredibly heavy. His grandfather's real name was Davis Rudnitsky.
And he eventually changed it to David Rudd.
Right. And he didn't shorten it to sound like a suave movie star. He changed it simply because he could not get a job in London with a Jewish last name.
Yeah.
He changed his identity just to get hired at a kosher butcher. And then World War II breaks out.
Yeah.
David serves in the British military, fighting the Axis powers for 5 long years.
That brings us to one of the most jarring historical realities in this entire stack of research.
Yeah, because you'd assume that after spending half a decade fighting fascism, he would come home to a hero's welcome, right? Like, he thought for 5 years, shouldn't he have come home a hero?
You would think so.
Yeah.
But if we impartially look at the 1947 dispatch from the Jewish Telegraphic Agency, which was unearthed in the sources in DAG, the reality on the ground was vastly different.
Yeah.
David returned to London only to be confronted by homegrown domestic fascist organizations operating in his own neighborhood.
In London. After the Blitz, after surviving the bloodiest conflict in human history.
Yeah. The 1947 document specifically identifies a new fascist group called the Union for British Freedom. The text details that this group was actively holding public meetings in areas like Edgware.
Unbelievable.
And at one of these gatherings, the speaker publicly advocated that British Jews should be flogged. The document also records that local synagogues were receiving telephonic threats warning of arson and bombings.
That is sickening. You spend 5 years fighting the monster abroad, only to walk back to your own street corner and find the monster waiting for you on your front porch.
Exactly. It forces you to recognize the immense psychological weight of that era. This is the generational trauma woven into the family's DNA.
Right.
It's a legacy of facing profound darkness, systemic prejudice, and still having to wake up, go to work, raise a family, and carry on living.
It makes perfect sense why you would want to build a stage. Like, when you inherit a generational history where the real world is that terrifying, you construct a fake world where you get to write the script, right?
That's a great point.
You seek out environments where you can control the narrative, like walking a tightrope with a net. But ironically, in Paul Rudd's case, he gravitated toward live theater, which brought a completely different, almost unbelievable type of darkness.
It really did.
And wait until you hear about the absolute disasters that happen on stage, because no one could have predicted this.
Right.
Stay tuned and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next.
Yeah, because the transition from historical trauma to theatrical absurdity is fascinating. To understand live theater versus film, you have to contrast the environment.
Right.
The Hollywood movie set, especially a Marvel production, is sterile. Every variable is managed, the lighting is locked, the marks are taped, and if something goes wrong, you just call cut and do another take.
But live theater is a volatile ecosystem. It is raw, uncontrollable humanity packed into a dark room.
Totally uncontrollable.
And reading these sources, Red wasn't just dealing with actors forgetting lines. The audience became the central source of chaos. Like, the audience kept falling off the tightrope. Let's talk about the late 90s.
Okay.
He's originating a role in a play called The Last Night of Ballyhoo. During one of the performances, an elderly gentleman in the audience dies. He literally passes away right in his seat.
Which is a profound tragedy, obviously. But the surreal nature of the event highlights that bizarre bubble of live performance.
Because nobody noticed. The play kept going.
Wow.
The actors kept hitting their marks, the audience kept watching the stage, and it wasn't until the theater completely emptied out that the staff realized a man had passed away. Rudd didn't even find out until the body had been removed.
The show literally must go on, even alongside mortality. The performers in the audience enter a collective trance that kind of overrides reality.
But the trance gets broken pretty violently sometimes. Fast forward to 2012, he's doing a play called Grace alongside Michael Shannon.
Right.
Shannon is center stage delivering this furious, intense monologue. And a noise starts building in the crowd.
And usually, a commotion in a theater dies down quickly due to peer pressure, right?
Yeah.
People shushing each other. But this specific disruption kept amplifying.
Right. And Michael Shannon, who is an incredibly intimidating presence on a good day, gets furious. He starts screaming his monologue directly at the noise to shut it down. And it works. The crowd goes dead silent.
Yeah.
But then Rudd goes backstage for a quick costume change and asks the stage manager what on earth just happened.
And this is where the grotesque reality of the theater asserts itself. It wasn't a heckler. A heavily intoxicated audience member in the balcony had lost control and vomited over the railing, directly onto about 10 different people sitting in the orchestra section below.
Imagine paying Broadway ticket prices to get puked on from a balcony while General Zog screams at you from the stage. It is pure, unadulterated chaos.
It really is. What's fascinating here is that Rudd seems to be a bizarre magnet for these extreme human events that blows anything from Hollywood movie sets completely out of the water.
Oh, we aren't even done with the bodily fluids. Let's look at 2001, a play called The Shape of Things with Rachel Weisz.
Oh, no?
He is on stage, lying on a bed, wearing just a t-shirt and boxer shorts. It is a serious, dramatic scene. Suddenly, the audience starts laughing hysterically.
A completely inappropriate reaction that derails the emotional momentum of the scene.
Rudd is lying there thinking, what is going on? And then he looks down. He had his leg propped up, and his wardrobe had failed him. He was completely, fully exposing his genitalia to the entire theater.
The ultimate actor's nightmare, realized in real time under a spotlight.
Yes. And the sources mention that actor Will Arnett later pointed out the incredible irony that the audience got a full view of his anatomy during a play literally called The Shape of Things.
Huh. That's too perfect. And to add one final layer to this magnet of absurdity, the sources confirm another completely separate incident where an audience member lost control of their bowels in the fourth row.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, the cast was made immediately aware of it by the smell wafting onto the stage.
Death, vomit, extreme nudity, and feces. Like, why would a multi-millionaire film actor continuously put himself back into that environment?
It circles back to the shock absorber. He doesn't just tolerate the chaos, he uses it to stay grounded.
Interesting.
When you spend months on a green screen set where everything is perfectly tailored to make you look heroic, you lose touch with reality. Live theater is a visceral reminder that you are not in control. It tests his ability to absorb the unexpected.
But instead of letting all this chaos from childhood bigotry to Broadway biological disasters turn him into a cynic, He actually routes it in the complete opposite direction,
Right.
which brings his story full circle back to Kansas City, back to his roots.
Yeah, despite the massive fame of his Marvel movies, his groundedness is most visible in how he handles his family legacy.
The sources outline this beautiful ongoing bond with his parents. His father, Michael, was obsessed with Ireland. He loved it so much that he decided to start building an Irish pub in the basement of their house.
Wow, an actual pub.
Yeah, with the specific intention that Paul's son Jack would one day inherit it.
It was meant to be a physical anchor for the family's future.
But sadly, Michael passed away from throat cancer before the pub could be completed. So, to honor his dad's ultimate wish and his love for the country, Paul took his father's ashes and scattered them across Ireland.
That's a deeply poignant act. It ensures the narrative of his father's life ended on terms defined by love, not illness.
Yeah.
And that sense of honoring his family extends directly to his mother, Gloria, as well.
Right, because Gloria was a major force in raising money for Children's Mercy Hospital in Kansas City. And
Yeah.
today, Paul has taken up that mantle in a massive way.
He really has.
He co-hosts the Big Slick Celebrity Weekend every single year.
He leverages his immense Hollywood capital to directly benefit the pediatric patients in his hometown.
Exactly. He teams up with other Kansas City natives, Rob Riggle, Jason Sudeikis, Eric Stonestreet, David Kuckner. They drag major A-list celebrities out to the Midwest for a weekend of events, raising millions of dollars for the hospital's cancer center.
And according to the materials, it's not just about writing a check or doing PR. He specifically highlights the quiet time spent with the pediatric patients and their families as the core reason they organize the event.
That's amazing.
His mother noted in an interview that seeing him interact with those children, making them laugh in the midst of their own terrifying realities, is when she feels the most pride.
I want you, the listener, right now, to just pause and map out that trajectory in your head. How does a person take all these chaotic, traumatic elements of their past?
Yeah.
Having a police officer draw a gun on you when you're just a kid, navigating an environment that labels you with slurs, discovering your grandfather fought fascism in a world war only to face it on his own street,
It's a lot.
losing your father to cancer, enduring a career filled with unpredictable, sometimes grotesque absurdity. How do you take all of that, and instead of becoming hard and cynical, you channel it into a life defined by bringing joy to sick kids and raising millions for medical research?
It requires a profound level of intentionality.
Definitely.
We started this deep dive talking about the nice guy image.
Mm-hmm.
We often assume that Hollywood everyman persona is carefully manufactured by publicists, a pristine mask designed to hide something scandalous underneath.
Right, we assume they're nice because they've never faced any real friction.
But what if, in Paul Rudd's case, the nice guy isn't a mask or a lack of friction at all? What if it's a highly evolved, multi-generational defense mechanism?
Oh, wow.
It's a conscious, hard-won choice to deliberately choose joy, humor, and charity after generations of his family navigating a very harsh and unpredictable world.
What if being nice is actually his rebellion? It makes you look at that shock absorber a little differently, doesn't it? The face might be ageless, but the foundation it's built on has weathered some serious historical and personal storms.
Absolutely.
You've been listening to Starscope Report, where Jordan and Jamie uncover the stories shaping Hollywood, music, and pop culture. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that keep the stars shining.